Today's episode is another listener Q&A. I'm thrilled to share my conversation with Josie, who wanted to turn a vast, characterless space into a vibrant reflection of her family's love of nature, travel, and craftsmanship. I'm talking about a challenge that many of you may face, which is how to decorate double-story walls or just really large walls in general. How do you fill them up? I don't want you to just fill them with stuff that has no meaning to you, that you'll get tired of, and that will look dated in a year. So instead, we cover the kinds of family photos and objects to hang, as well as wallpaper and adding molding so that you're creating a space that feels both collected and deeply personal. From antiquing and thrifting to crafting a strategic gallery wall, we explore how the slow style approach can transform memories and materials into a soulful, welcoming entryway. Let's go. Josie, welcome to the Slow Style Home Podcast. I'm so excited to talk with you about your home today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really need your help. So thank you for accepting my plea for help.
I am very excited because I think this is such a great slow style question, but I'm going to let you share it again in your own words.
So we moved into our home about a year and a half ago. We had lived in a 16 craftsman home in our same town that just oozed with charm. I had original oak floors. It had just a lot of those vintage pieces, original pieces that I just loved so much. But functionality wise, we had kind of surpassed it. We had 3 kids and we had no second living space, only really one functional bathroom. And it just wasn't working anymore. But the market for building was really pretty volatile.
Yeah.
And we kind of, I don't know, fell into a great deal on a great house. But the home was built, I want to say in 2008. Like I said, very solid home, but vast walls
Yeah.
and not a lot of character. And right. I'm just having a really hard time filling the vast walls in a way that feels like accumulated and collected, true to my style, because it's hard to put one thing up on a huge vast wall.
Yes. And just to clarify, when we're talking huge, it's because you've got some cathedral ceilings, right? So they're double-story walls.
Yes, I have.
So when you say vast, we're talking about really tall, they go up a stairway.
Yes, that is the one right in our entryway. It's a 2-story wall. And that is probably my hardest wall too. But then there's other just big walls that are maybe just 1 story, but they're just really wide. And I don't know what to put there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, like I said at the beginning, I love this question. I love how you phrased it in your email to me, because you said something to the effect of, I don't want to just throw stuff up there. You want it to feel like you want it to, like you said, kind of feel collected over time, which of course is what I love to see in homes, because I really believe that that's how you get a very personalized home as opposed to a generic home.
Agreed.
And you started with a home that you already knew how much you loved the character. And so what's great about that is that you've lived in a place where you already have an understanding, a visual understanding, maybe even a visceral understanding of what those architectural details do, what those little niches or built-ins or molding or light fixtures or whatever else some of those older homes have that our newer homes have been kind of stripped bare of.
Yes.
So we're definitely going to focus on the walls today, but we're going to start with your style more broadly.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to define it first, and then I'm going to maybe try to get it a little bit more nuanced. So tell me first, how do you envision your style?
But I would say I like antique or I don't know. Vintage isn't quite the right word, but just I like solid. And I just feel like those things were more prevalent in past decades.
Right.
I also love I would say craftsman style, not just the traditional arts and crafts style home or that mission influence. I do love that, but also things made by craftsmen.
I see. Yeah.
So I love a handmade basket or a cutting board from a a show with craftspeople, a broom that I bought from like a broom shop. I love that
Oh,
sort of.
cool.
I have like I'd say like the china, porcelain,
Yeah.
stone,
Yep.
wood, those sort of materials.
Natural materials.
Yes. Yeah.
So it sounds like you'd like to really see I mean, when you gravitate toward natural materials and also craftsmanship, you're talking about kind of honoring the beauty that is inherent in the object,
Agreed.
inherent
Yes.
from the materials, but also when you can see sort of the human hand
Yes.
in something that's made.
Agree. Yes.
Which is beautiful. Okay, so let's get a little bit more nuanced. And what I think is helpful is to think about what you want to experience in that space, in each space. But of course, doing it one at a time to me is the only way to do it and not get overwhelmed, as opposed to trying to do it all at once. I think there's a big tendency to want to do a lot of things at once when you first move because you want to put your stamp on it. And it's new and it's fresh and you're excited. But I think pretty quickly, most of us find that that's a little bit overwhelming. And then we start making some decisions, like we start investing in some maybe bigger pieces that we don't love, and then we kind of regret. So anyway, back to doing it one room at a time. In an entryway, you know, that counts as a room, especially when it's a big entryway, but even a small entryway. How do you want people to feel when they walk in that door? I mean, sometimes the whole family's using that front entryway and sometimes they're not. So that's a difference. But off the top of your head, how do you want to welcome people into your home? Or do you? Maybe you want to put out the doormat that says, no guests, please.
No, I want them to feel welcome for sure. I think I listened to one of your episodes quite a while ago, and it was the Home Sweet
Maison.
Yes.
One of my favorite episodes. I'll link to it in the show notes page. Yep.
I have a little bit of a French, I don't know what you would call a Francophile, a little bit.
Okay.
And so I loved that idea of it representing your family, the entryway representing your family. And there's some structural things in our entryway that I'd like to update, in the years to come, like our front door and maybe like the tile. But in terms of like the decor, I wanted to represent our family. So I have like a little craftsman, like a sofa entry table.
Yeah.
And that is actually my grandparents. And on it, I have a lamp, which is just like a Target lamp, but it's cute. But then I have a bowl that we have. So our family, one of my husband and I want to do in our lifetime is visit all of the national parks.
Oh.
So that's kind of how we center our vacations and things like that.
Yeah.
And I have a bowl that I bought on a trip to the Grand Teton, Yellowstone area. And I have pine cones from that area as well.
Nice.
And then I have a picture of two of my kids in Smoky Mountain National Park. And then I have like it was actually a greeting card, but I put it in a frame, that was painted by a local artist my husband and I had traveled to Alaska to see some of the national parks there. And so it is of like an iceberg. And so but it's like this big on a wall, this,
know. Yeah.
So
for everyone who's listening, she's making a very small gesture, like this little tiny thing on this, it's in a frame, but it's on this great big wall. Yeah.
Yeah. And those are just setting on the table. There is nothing on the wall.
Right.
And I've kicked around, sometimes we've been places and I've seen these like great big historic prints in black and white with frames. And I think that's beautiful, but I'm like, I don't know what would I put in the frame?
Right.
I don't know. I just don't know.
So this is such an amazing start. You've made a little vignette out of some very personal things. And what I love about it is it's not just family photos. You've got the bowl, you've got the pine cones, you've got a little painting. Nothing wrong with family photos, but I think that's sort of the sort of easy fallback. When we want to represent our families, we kind of stop at family photos. And I think there's so much more richness to our lives than family photos. The ones that are candid, I think, have a little bit more lasting staying power because they tell a story, they tell a moment in time a little bit better than the posed ones. But still, there's just so much more to pull from other than family photos. And you've made such an amazing start. So the good thing is we're not really starting from scratch here. You already have an idea in your mind about what you want this big entryway to look and feel like, and representing your family. And let's kind of hone in specifically on this, your love of travel, but also specifically your love of nature and traveling to see nature and immersing yourself in that. And I think that's such a great starting place. So most likely, because it's so big, you probably are going to have a gallery wall, because trying to find paintings that fill the wall, it could take you a very long time, and it could also be very costly.
Notes.
I'm not saying it's not doable, but I'm saying that, for most of us, when we have a really big wall to fill, we understandably go the gallery wall route. It's more accessible, right?
Uh-huh.
However, you still have this dilemma of a really big space.
Mhm.
So even a gallery wall for you, you can have some small things. And in fact, I think you should embed a few small things going up the stairway throughout your gallery wall. But because it's such a big space, you're going to want to anchor those small things with some bigger pieces. And it does not have to all be art. I'm not saying that this is going to work, but you said broom, like handmade broom. I mean, something like that can go on a wall. I mean, it doesn't just need to be art. Now, that broom probably would do better in a different space,
Right.
because if we're focusing more on things that maybe you picked up in your travels or that reference your travels, it may not be a broom. Maybe it is a broom. I don't know, but I'm just thinking objects, right? Objects can go on the walls too. And that really opens up things like, you talked about materiality. Gosh, the last national park I was in was Yosemite.
Okay.
And the waterfall there, the big, huge rock there, the trees there, you could even be looking for a really beautifully carved or even natural driftwood or something. Well, you said you're in Alaska. Then there's also Acadia up in Maine. I'm thinking about the driftwood that you find in those kinds of national parks. Things like that, woven things that are made from natural materials could also be hung on that wall.
Okay.
The other idea that you could do is you could kind of be on the lookout for some vintage travel posters that feature the national park. So you've probably seen those. Those may be too overdone for you. Maybe you've seen them too much, because the national parks are really having a moment, because I think they just celebrated like 125 years or something. I don't know. Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff out there. And so you may be like, okay, it's a little bit saturated right now. Maybe I'm a little tired of seeing them. But some of those vintage travel posters are really, really cool. Great graphics, great color, and they're a little bit bigger. And if you matted them and framed them, they'd be even bigger. So thinking about some things that you could find kind of more easily by just doing a Google search, versus some things that you're going to take your time to find, I think is going to make you very happy. But let's talk about that idea of taking your time. What I would do is I would start this gallery wall idea. I would maybe look for an odd number of things, because humans tend to like the aesthetic. There's an aesthetic appeal to grouping odd numbers together. So it's kind of like a fail safe, right?
Right.
Find like 5 pieces.
Okay.
And start them, if you're looking at a staircase, I would start them sort of midway up the staircase.
Okay.
So the midway point that you can actually see from the first floor when you walk in,
Okay.
maybe start there and start working your way outwards.
Okay.
Right? So you start with one piece, and then you put another 4 pieces sort of around it, and you want to mix shapes and colors and materials and all of that, most likely because you're not going to buy everything all at once. So forget about trying to be uniform. Forget about doing this gallery wall where everything's in a black frame to unify everything, which is another look, and it's great. I don't think that's going to work for you. I think it's going to be too limited.
I agree.
So go ahead and give yourself permission to do different shapes and different style frames and that kind of thing. Some things can be unframed, framed. And when you start low, like not too far above the railing, you're starting at eye level of an adult human.
Okay.
Right? As opposed to centering it on the wall.
Okay.
If you center it on the whole huge wall, it's going to get lost.
Okay.
And it's going to be like, oh, wow, you have a long way to go to fill up this wall.
That's a great, yeah.
Whereas if you just start at a human level, eye level, sort of in the center of the diagonal, not too high up off the railing, grouped together, it's going to look much more intentional. And then I think you could have so much fun going to thrift stores, antique shops, and looking for $20, $40 oil paintings that are just of natural spaces.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be from the Great Smoky Mountains, but it could reference that. It could remind you of that time of day. Like maybe you took a hike and it was the most amazing sunset, and that's what that painting reminds you of. And that way, you are going to get a mix of mediums, you're meaning art mediums. You're going to get a mix of styles. You're going to get a mix of frames. It's going to start looking very collected pretty quickly. And then also be on the lookout. My husband and I went on our honeymoon, we went to Mount Hood in Oregon to ski. And years later, I found a crate, an apple crate that, some farmer used to sell his apples out of. And there's an old label on it that said Mount Hood, and with a picture of Mount Hood.
Uh-huh.
And it just, Mount Hood apples or whatever. That's the kind of thing you want to find. You take off just the part that has the label and you hang that up on the wall, right?
Yeah.
So it really can be anything.
I love that.
And I can tell that you already have the ability to think a little abstractly about what will remind you of things. I mean, the fact that you have this bowl and you have these pine cones and nothing is screaming tchotchke or touristy souvenir, you already get it. You get that, oh, it just needs to mean something to me.
Yes.
The other thing I would consider, now this would be if you did want to spend a lot of money. Well, I don't know what a lot of money, I mean, it's different for everybody. I shouldn't say that. If you want to make an investment, let me put it this way. You could wallpaper even just that one part of the wall, which I understand would be an investment because you probably want to hire a professional hanger because it's 2 stories.
Right.
But a wallpaper would go a long way to filling up that wall with some visual interest while you slowly amass the gallery wall things to put on top of it.
And you would recommend the whole wall?
I would. As much of it, I mean, the wall from one end to the other. You don't want to stop anywhere. Whether or not you wrap it around those interior corners to further walls is sort of up to you and your budget. Yeah.
We had kicked around also some sort of molding. Do you think the wallpaper would be, I don't know, what would you lean toward?
Molding? Well, I'm not sure exactly what you mean. Do you mean buying like 3/4 round molding that kind of goes on the interior? Okay.
I wish I had the right terminology in my head. I've seen pictures, but it creates kind of a long column and probably like a horizontal breakdown as well. But then I feel like that's difficult to hang things. That's difficult to
put things on top of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me describe what we're talking about. Let's see if I can describe it just for people who are listening. So molding, I assume you don't mean crown molding around the tops of the.
No, I'm sorry, like walls. Down the wall.
You mean we call that picture molding.
Yes, maybe that, yes.
Right? They're molding that has been attached to the wall, painted the same color as the wall.
Yes.
And it kind of architecturally breaks up this big expanse. That's what you mean, yeah?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And then, and you probably mean, you've seen the interior of those picture frame moldings wallpapered, yeah?
Oh, no, I mean, yeah, I have. I didn't even think of that though, but I was, yes.
Okay, so you were just thinking about putting up some architectural interest by putting,
Yeah.
So,
but I like the wallpaper idea.
All of these are on the table, I think. So if you did just the molding, one of your questions was, how do you hang things on top of that? Well, how you do that is you would probably want to make fairly large picture frame molding areas so that whatever you're hanging goes inside of them. You probably wouldn't hang it on top of the molding. I mean, you could, because really there are no rules and you could do whatever you want. But you'd make them big enough so that they could hold, quite a few different objects. You can also do that with putting wallpaper inside that picture frame molding. which is kind of like when you think of old painted paneling that grand homes in Europe would have, or frescoes that people would have painted on their homes, or murals. Sometimes instead of painting the entire wall with a mural, they would do these panels that were also inside kind of picture frame molding. And you could do the same thing with wallpaper. The benefit of doing that is it's a lot easier to hang because you're not worrying about how it wraps around corners or how it's finished. Like the molding does the finishing for you. It's also a little bit cheaper because you're using less materials. But I think just plain old wallpaper going up that wall would also look fabulous. And I'll tell you, the only reason I'm even thinking of it is there's a guy who wrote a book. I've interviewed him 2 times or more on my show. Let me think. Max Humphrey is his name. I love this guy. He came out with a book last year, and I got to get him back on the show. He wrote a book that was all about the interior design in lodges at national parks. It's so fabulous. It's so fabulous. He also has a line of wallpaper, and he does really fun motifs riffing off of the Old West or the forests and things like that. I don't know of a particular line off the top of my head that I think, oh my gosh, this would be perfect for you. But he may have something in his collection that you go, oh my gosh, this would look amazing. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there because I couldn't help but think of him.
That's a great recommendation to look into.
You'll love the book. Even if you don't want the wallpaper, you'll love the book.
I'll have to read that.
Yeah. What I'm thinking about the wallpaper is probably you're going to want to go with a small scale repeating pattern because you are going to be hanging things on top of it. So let's say you get a painting that's, 18 by 20 and it's a mountainscape type of thing. I don't know. The focal point of the painting, which is, let's say, a mountain or maybe a waterfall on a mountain, you don't want that competing with this wallpaper pattern that's behind it that has great big roses on it or something, right? So you want a smaller scale pattern in the wallpaper so that when you hang things on it, those things still stand out as distinctive from the wallpaper.
Right. Okay.
When I say stuff like that, I make it sound like a rule. And what I really should say is there are ways to do it that would break that rule. But those are the kinds of things where I either leave to the trained designers or I suggest to somebody who's already played around. This isn't their first rodeo with hanging wallpaper, right? So it's not that it can't be done, but I'm saying it's sort of the no fail way of doing it the first time, right?
And that's what I'm needing.
Okay. I honestly thought that we would spend a little bit more time drawing out, like, well, what do you want the experience to be? What do you want the feel? It's so awesome that you already kind of have that in your head. You really are so far along. I mean, that step to people is the hardest step.
My blank walls would argue with you, but
well, no, but you've got it. You've got it in your mind. You've got it. And I think that, like I said, you're open to kind of funky ideas. And so I think you're going to take this and run with it.
I love the idea. And I think that's what I was really needing is like how to start. And I think when you said that center, like something large to kind of build off of in a group of 5, I can handle that. I can.
It was concrete enough, right? That you're like, oh, okay, I can, wrap my head around that.
Yes, it feels doable.
Yeah, absolutely. And think about if you did want to do some more family photos, think about enlarging them, or even just one big one that's like really amazing candid photo of you guys. You can take it to I don't know what you have. Where do you live?
I live in central Nebraska.
Okay, so I don't know what you have out there, if it's Kinko's or Staples or whatever one of those big print shops are, but they can do what's called an engineer print.
Oh.
Which is, it's a blown up photograph, like really big, like the kind that you might use well, I guess it's called an engineer print. It's like engineers would use, but I mean, think about the kind of big prints you might see if you go to a conference and like you
Yeah.
walk in and there's this big thing that's hanging like a flag type thing, only it's a canvas that size. You could do something like that. It's going to be very grainy because it's blown up and because it's not a photograph that's meant to be blown up that big
Right.
because we don't take photographs that large unless you are a
Right.
professional photographer. But sometimes that grainy look, especially if it's black and white, can look very cool. And it's a very affordable way to get a big photograph on your wall.
I love that idea. Like I had told you when we've been to, I'm just thinking, oh, I think it was Skagway, Alaska. We went to this museum and they had these like historic photos that they were huge.
Oh,
And I love that
oh,
that idea, that like that big picture in the black and
yes.
white. Yes.
I love it too. I love it too. Just trying to think about, oh, how could you get something big up there?
Yeah, I love that idea. I love that.
And I think then whatever your rug is that's going to be in the front hall, that's like part doormat, part real rug, whatever, like that's going to be informed by all of this, by the colors, by the textures, the weaving, your light fixture, all of it. I mean, that's another thing you consider is a couple of sconces on the wall going up to they could even be the kind that shed some light on one or two of the paintings that you end up getting.
Yeah.
But I think what's nice about sconces up a big staircase is it makes it feel a little bit more intimate. When you only have the sconces on and not those big, huge overhead chandeliers,
Yeah.
It's just a very nice, cozy feeling to go up a big staircase with that kind of a thing. Now, sconces, that does require some wiring, which you may want to do eventually, unless one of you is handy at electrical stuff, you might need to hire somebody, but it's something to keep in mind.
Would you do it on a diagonal, then going up, right? Like,
but yeah, they would go one or two or three would go, well, two or three would go, yeah, up in a diagonal line. Just the same way your pieces are going to go up. And in case that wasn't clear, right? Like the pieces are going to go up a diagonal. They're not going to go straight across.
But the anchor piece, you would recommend, like you said, eye level from the when you first walk in, from that floor.
Eye level from the
ground level from the stair.
From the stair that you're on.
Perfect. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I love this. Is like exactly what I needed.
Oh, I'm so glad.
The kind of nuts and bolts of because like I said, I know what I like, but I don't always know how to get there.
Yeah. Well, I think getting started is always the hardest part when you have a lot of choices.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, do I start with the wall color? Do I start with the rug? Do I start with the light? Do I start with the artwork? It's hard to know where to start. And I think the great thing about slow style is you can add to it over time. Yeah. You can put up stuff on the wall now and later do wallpaper.
Right.
And then rehang it. I mean, it's not, these are not permanent decisions.
Right.
But there's no reason why you can't start hanging now and loving it until you get the wallpaper, if that's where you want to go, right? That's the other thing. We need to love our homes right now.
Agreed. Okay, so when you're talking about the wallpaper, I mean, just throwing out like I don't even like a color or a print. I do like kind of those more earthy, natural colors. I love I like greens and blue, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what, I guess like if I'm going to look into that Max Humphrey, I'm going to look at his things, but even just off the top of your head, what would some things to look into?
So this is where it gets really, really about personal preference. There's no answer that I can give you that says, oh, you definitely want to, go toward the cool colors because of what's going on the rest of the room. I mean, you do want to consider your natural light. Well, this is more really for paint colors than wallpaper, but you do want to understand what it's going to kind of look like when it is daytime and make sure it's a colorway that doesn't get completely washed out by the daylight or doesn't turn a weird color. Like sometimes yellows, like they can look really green or sometimes really muddy and brown depending on the light. So you do want to consider those things, but I'm not sure that I have any recommendations other than this.
That's okay.
the escape. Yeah, I really think it's going to be personal preference. I guess I will tell you a quick story about my den, which is I love wallpaper and I've been wanting to wallpaper forever. It took me a long time to convince my husband about the wallpaper because all he could think about was how hard it was going to be to take down, which is what everybody says about wallpaper.
Yes.
The newer wallpaper is easier to take down, way easier than the old stuff if you've ever scraped off the old stuff. So that's one thing. But I loved bold, big, crazy patterns, big scale, lots of color. And I thought for sure this is the one I was going to get when I finally got my wallpaper. We're doing the den, and I won't get into my whole vision for the room, but I ended up picking a cream background with dark gray, what looked kind of like a hand-drawn, very simple, thin-lined geometric pattern. Nothing like the wild florals or whatever that I was picturing. And I did that because I realized that it would have been too much with the deep, dark colors I was using in the room and the things I wanted to hang on the walls.
That makes sense.
So I guess one question to ask yourself is the wallpaper going to be the star of the show, or are the things on the walls going to be the star of the show? Neither is right or wrong.
Right.
And like I've seen some fabulous powder rooms where the wallpaper is just phenomenal and there's like nothing hanging on the walls because the wallpaper is so fabulous. And there is going to be quite a big expanse of that wallpaper showing,
right?
Because you're probably not going to cover the entire wall with objects and art, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I think that you may find that because you're going to be putting up very personal, meaningful things on that wall, you may find that you want the wallpaper to be a great foil, a great background for those things to really let them shine versus a crazy color pattern wallpaper.
I think that makes sense to me too. I love all this. This is exactly what I needed.
So glad. That makes me so happy.
I'm really excited now
good. I'm excited. I'm like, oh, I want to see what this turns out to be. So do stay in touch. Do send me pictures.
I have not seen a vision at all ever with this wall. It's just been kind of overwhelming, but I'm kind of seeing a vision. This summer, we're actually going to Voyageurs National Park in Minnesota. We've never been there, but I'm just picturing like a picture with my kids, doing something, not smiling necessarily, but with the water and the trees.
Yes. Oh
and
my
I'm picturing that and with that engineer print, with like a mat and like an oak frame as my center point. And I can see it.
Right. You're going to be like looking for that picture. That's so
I know. I don't want to force the moment.
No, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, you're going to be intentional about it. Yeah. And while you're there, if you don't already do this, go to some thrift stores in the area because you're going to get things that are of that area in those particular thrift stores.
I love that. That's a great, that's awesome. And we're driving, so I can put it all.
Even better. You get something big.
Yes.
That's so great.
I feel so great about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I cannot wait to see how it develops as it comes along. So please do send me pictures and stay in touch.
I will. Thank you so much. I'm so excited.